So that job that I announced I was getting 2 months ago, I've actually quit. And here is why. I'm spilling the tea. I'm still not going to tell you exactly where it was, but it was in retail. And let's go ahead and get started because there was a lot of things that went down.
Living life every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Yeah.
I separated both channels a bit less than 2 weeks ago from when I'm filming this, and separate my two different types of content because it would help others to find me and get to know me. So about 2 months ago, I announced the fact that I was going to be starting a new job. I was going to be going into a retail job because my finances were rubbish basically, and they still are rubbish. So technically, if I was just looking at my finances and my financial aspect, I shouldn't have quit that job. I should have just stayed at the job. But because it was affecting me as a person so much, I decided that for my health and for my well-being, it was going to be best for me to leave. On top of that, there was also a few different issues with me and the manager. And I don't know if these issues were like mutual issues or whether they were just me thinking that they were issues, but I'm still going to just briefly explain all of them because some of them are probably going to be made worse because of my PTSD and because of like my potential autism diagnosis and all the different things. So I started this retail job, as I said, as a means to make money and to like improve my financial situation. That was just the main goal for this job. Like, I wanted a job where I was going to be around children because I do love kind of being around children. So this particular retail place is a very childlike retail place, and you attract a lot of children into the store and things like that. And because I already work at a school, it seemed like it was going to be the ideal sort of thing. And when you think about it, when school's on holiday, retail gets busier. So the idea was that when I was not working at the school, then the retail would be busier and therefore I'd get more shifts, more overtime. So I went into this retail job, and yes, logistically, it makes more sense. But my body just could not cope. So my body, I have a lot of problems with my body. I have chronic pain, I have all these different things. And because of that, I struggled physically to get on with the job. Like, I would come home and I'd be in so much pain that I would be crying. Like, there was one time when I came home from a shift, I was walking back from the bus stop and I was with one of my neighbours because I just happened to be on the same bus as her. And we live in a flat building, so like we walk back to the exact same door with bits and pieces. And the whole time we were talking, I was holding back these tears. Got back, got to the driveway, and literally I just started crying because the pain was just too much. And then she opened the door. I went really quiet and I was crying silently. And she opened the door to the main building, and she turned around to me and goes, have a good evening, sort of thing. And then at that point she noticed that I was crying, and she just said, oh, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Like, she just did not expect it. And I was like, I'm just in so much pain. I just need to go and sit down and take some painkillers. And she just said, well, hopefully you can have a good night's sleep tonight and you'll feel a bit better tomorrow. So the first reason I left this job was because of my physical health, was because I just could not cope and because I was in so much pain. The second reason was because my mental health was just declining, and I think because I was in more pain, my mental health was declining and I was less resilient to external factors because I was in pain. They do say how much your physical health impacts your mental health. It just was not good for either part of my body, like my brain or my actual body. So both were kind of like were screaming at me, just leave this job. And then now getting into the nitty-gritty. So I had two run-ins with my manager. The first particular run-in was because I had forgotten my keys one evening, and I was due to close up, and obviously, like, because I was like a key holder, I had the key to the safe, I had the key to the shop, and you can lock up the shop without the key. Like, that's, you know, that's not too bad. But you need the safe key to be able to actually cash up and like finish the day. And because my keys were on the same ring, obviously made sense. You know, I'd left these keys in my other bag because I just brought a different bag because I was rushing out that morning, and because I just had them in the other bag, and I just kind of grabbed the bag I was using more recently, not thinking that the keys were in my current normal bag, my normal work bag. So I got to the shift and she was about to leave. So we'd been on shift together for about 4 or 5 hours. It had been pleasant, apart from the time when obviously I had to tell her that I'd forgotten my key. And up until the point when she said, okay, I'm leaving, I did not realise I hadn't got my key. And then for the split second that she said, okay, I'm leaving, that is when my brain went into overdrive, I think. And then suddenly I was like, I have not got my keys on me. And I literally had to say to her, to go, I forgot my keys. And she goes,
you've got to be joking.
And at that point she took like some really deep breaths and she was like, I just need to breathe, I just need to like calm down. And in retrospect, you know, that day she made her point. Like, she calmed herself down so she wasn't going to get angry, which was the best she could do at that point. And then she basically explained the fact that I could not forget my keys ever again because, you know, she was assertively saying to me that I couldn't forget my keys ever again because I needed my keys to lock up and I should have known to bring them. And doesn't matter how many times I said to her, it was an honest mistake and it was honestly, I just forgot. And I'm a scatterbrain anyway, and she knows that from the word get-go because I told her. She basically made her point across and she said I couldn't forget my keys again, and she lent me her keys. A few days later, when I was there, and obviously I'd left her keys in the safe, and that day I was due to cash up, so she was due to also be here. That day, head office rang and they cancelled maintenance. And because they cancelled maintenance, that meant that my boss wasn't going to get paid to come in and get her keys, which, you know, was the reason she lent me her keys in the first place. So the first thing she said when she came in, I let her in because obviously I'd already like closed the shutter and stuff. I let her in and the first thing she said wasn't hi or hello or like how was the shift or anything like that. And it wasn't even down to the point of, can I have my keys please? It was,
you need to give me my keys.
And I was like, that is just so rude, but okay. Let it wash over me. And so I went to the back and I unlocked the safe with my keys that I had at the time, and I then gave her keys and she proceeded to walk out. I was behind her. I then went back straight to cashing up, and this is when she turned around and, you know, I said bye, have a nice evening, like really, really pleasantly, even though I could tell that she was in a really bad mood. But I was like trying to be the bigger person, I suppose, and I was trying to be like the nice one and say hi, like, you know, bye, have a nice evening, you know, sort of thing. And she turned around to me and she had the most massive go at me. So she started saying how, like, you know, she was really annoyed at the fact that she had to come into the store because, you know, she wasn't being paid here, that she didn't live 5 minutes away, and that she had to pay for gas, she had to pay for, you know, getting into the store, and that next time if I forgot my keys, she would make me, and that was her words, she would make me be at the store for 7 o'clock in the morning when she arrived so that she could open up the store and I could give her keys back. And the way this was said just broke me, because I, in my mind, was like, I know the severity of this. I know that it's serious. I know that what I've done was an honest mistake, but it was wrong and I should be a bit more careful. And you made that point the other day. But having a go at me now just broke me because I was not expecting it. It took me off guard. And part of my PTSD is confrontation, and is shouting, is arguments. So after this confrontation, argument type thing, she left, and I don't think she really understood to the full extent how much it had affected me. But she left, she turned around, she locked herself out of the store, like, you know, and I was at this point, I was behind the till, just flabbergasted by the amount of, like, just emotions I was experiencing. I was starting to shake, I was just feeling so anxious. As soon as she had locked herself out and she'd walked away, I burst into tears crying, and I just couldn't. I was just like, I was physically tired, and then now I was mentally drained because my boss had just had a go at me. And so I rang AJ, and AJ being my best friend, I rang her and I basically just said to her, she's just had a go at me. And AJ knew that there was some issues with my boss. AJ also knew that the job wasn't the best physical health wise. And then when I called her, and like I called her out of the blue, and usually when I call her out of the blue she answers, because like I suppose she knows that sometimes if I call her out of the blue it's going to be an emergency and I need her. If I don't call her out of the blue and I just text her saying, oh, can we FaceTime later, usually that's because I just want to chat. But like if I just call her, she knows that like she needs to answer. So she answered, and I was crying and I was burst into tears and I was literally like just panicking, and she was there for me, and she was there and she just said, take a few deep breaths, and I took some deep breaths, and I'm kind of getting emotional thinking about it now, because I never had friends when I was younger, and so having someone that I knew I could call and that I knew I'd be able to speak to and I knew was going to help is almost something that I never thought I would have. So if you're watching this, AJ, which you probably are because you support me through everything, thank you, because you were just the one and only person that I wanted right there, and just I wanted the person that I knew was going to understand, and you did. And if it wasn't for you, I think I probably would have had a massive like meltdown, panic attack in the middle of that store, and yeah, I wouldn't have survived any longer in that job, because this was the first run in, and AJ, you helped me to kind of recuperate from that and be able to then go back and try again, because I think if I hadn't have had you, I would have just given up and just said, nope, not gonna try. Not even gonna try one more time. So after getting off the phone to AJ, I finished cashing up and I went home. Like, I locked up, I went home, I turned the lights off, I did all my closing bits and pieces, and I went home. And when I got home, I just fell asleep. I didn't even eat dinner because I was literally at the point of just mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion. Like, I just could not do anything else. So I just went to sleep. Carrying on, a few weeks later in this job, I had a problem with the washing machines where I live. It's a communal laundry, so there was like, it was shut for like a week. And I had a shift like 5 days previous, and I'd come in and I was wearing a black t-shirt. Like, this is obviously grey, but I was wearing a similar t-shirt to this. It had sleeves down to here, which is what our uniform had as well, and it was completely black apart from a pattern on the front similar to this, because it was like just like it was a Shein t-shirt, like just a normal t-shirt. It was baggy. There was, you know, you couldn't tell when I had the apron on the front of it, like I had the work apron on the front of it. And I had been working with my manager for about 2 hours previous to her having a go at me, and I had the apron on the whole time. And throughout the whole time me having the apron on, she hadn't said a word. She hadn't said nothing. She hadn't said anything about the fact that my uniform was amiss. And bearing in mind that the uniform has writing on the back, it has writing on the sides, on the arms, and it has writing on the front. So it wasn't as if the only writing on the uniform was at the front and you wouldn't have known. Like, if she knew the uniform, she would have noticed that the big writing on the back was missing, and surely that I'm not wearing the t-shirt that I'm meant to be wearing. But I was covering the front up that wasn't the uniform, and I was covering that up with an apron. And I asked a colleague, the other one, when I came in, and I said, I'm really sorry, the washing machines were broke, couldn't wash my uniform, and I believe it's in the wash somewhere, I don't know where it is. And she said, well, at least the top you've got on is black, just put the apron on and you'll be fine. And as I said, the manager worked with me. She came in at midday and she worked with me for 2 hours and did not notice it. And then the second that I go for lunch, I then come out, obviously wearing the t-shirt without the apron, and obviously that's fine because some of us do. We do that. We go to lunch and we don't wear our work t-shirt. We wear like a normal t-shirt. I came back. I then came out of the staff room forgetting the apron for about 2 minutes. I came out and I'd forgot the apron, so I goes, oh, and I put my drink down and then went straight back out back. But before I had chance to go out back again, her comment was,
where's your uniform?
Not thinking that possibly I was about to go back out back again to go and put it on because I'd forgotten to get changed. No, she basically just went, where's your uniform? And with that, I just said, well, the washing machine's been out of order for over a week in my place, and you know, I don't know where my top is. It's somewhere in my washing basket. Like, I have a really massive washing basket and all bits and pieces. And from the word get-go, my manager has hated any sort of excuses. But in my mind, like, it's not an excuse if it's true. Like, it's kind of like an excuse, but if it's true, then surely, like, it's just helping you to understand why it's been more difficult for me to, like, get things done at home that I've had to get done. So no, at this point, she said to me that she was annoyed with me because I had over 5 days to get my uniform washed, and that I should have hand washed it and then dried it like in my flat if I couldn't have used the washing machine. And I said to her, my flat holds in moisture. It would not have dried in 5 days if I'd washed it in the sink, because if I wash it in the sink and it's dripping wet, my flat will not dry it in 5 days pretty much. It takes about 2.5 days if it comes straight out of the washing machine and it goes on my airer, simply because my flat just holds in the moisture and it doesn't circulate the air, and it's constantly just so like so damp that it just, I've had mould in my flat before because it's been so damp, and it doesn't matter how many times I open the windows, how much I have an air humidifier now, like a dehumidifier thing that like draws the moisture out, and that like container in that gets full like over the course of a day, like sometimes a day and a half, and I have to keep changing it and tipping the water out because there is just so much moisture in my flat that, you know, it's not going to dry in 5 days if it's dripping wet. Whereas when you're in a washing machine, obviously it spins it and it gets like a load of the water out. So it then, if that takes 2.5 days, if I'm washing it in the sink and it's dripping wet, how is that going to dry in 5 days? So I briefly told her all of this, and she was almost like, that's not an excuse, you should have washed it, you should have dried it, you should have found a way. You should have gone out of your way to find a way to get this washed. And I was thinking, this job I've been at less than 2 months and I've already had 2 run-ins with you, and if you've got a problem with me, like, sit down, have a conversation, and let's work out how we can get around it, because, you know, I hate confrontation, and that is one thing that I told her. I hate confrontation. If you've got an issue with me and you want to talk about it, don't have a go at me. Like, sit down with me and say, I didn't appreciate it when you did this because, you know, this and this, like, I don't work that way, or something like that. And at the start she was doing that, but then she just lost it, I suppose, and decided that she wasn't going to do that no more. So after this second run-in, I came out, I was nearly crying, but I had to work and it was the middle of the shift. So I can't exactly go out back because, one, she's out there, and if I cry out there in front of her, then that just like makes me look attention seeking. But I can't cry out on the shop floor because I'm in front of customers. So I'm having to hold back these tears thinking, I can't cry, I can't cry, I can't cry. And obviously I'm wanting to cry so badly, so I take my drink and I'm sipping it, and I'm basically trying to breathe, trying to like just compose myself, because I just feel shit. You know, there's no other words to describe it. I feel rubbish. I feel like I'm about to just have a massive panic attack, but I can't go out back and have this panic attack because my boss is out there and she's the one who's caused all the issues. So I decide that I'm just going to have a mini internal panic attack, which is never good, because when you have that sort of panic attack, it just means it's going to come out later. But for the rest of the shift, I was literally fiddling with, like, you know, I was like, you know, playing with my thumb, I was rubbing my fingers, I was literally just a nervous wreck. Like, on edge, nervous wreck, like I was not with it. Like, I'm usually one of those people when I was in the customer service and I was like, you know, hello, welcome to this particular retail job, can I help you with anything? And, you know, this manager defeated that energy that I had inside of me, and this manager decided that, you know, she was going to push me down, like down to the ground and bury me almost, because you know, just because we didn't get on, like, and she drove me to decide that I was going to leave. Like, yes, the mental health, the physical health, like, that was one thing, but because I'd signed a contract, I was like, right, I'm going to just deal with this, I'm going to just at least do the whole probationary period, which was 3 months, and it got 2 months in, and because the manager now wasn't helping, that was the last straw that like broke the camel's back, and I had to leave. I just couldn't. So I handed my notice in, and I basically went to go and stay with AJ for a bit because I just didn't want to be alone. I had about 5 or 6 days off, so I just needed to, like, I needed to recuperate, I needed to see someone that I know was going to be supportive, and I needed to just have a break from being alone. And because I live alone, it just made sense. I went to go and see AJ, and then I came, well, the second day I was there, I was talking to her about it, and she just goes, you need to resign, like, you just need to resign, because what you're doing is hurting you. What you're doing is going to end up, like, driving you insane, because you are obviously unhappy, and you're not just unhappy to the point where you can fix it, you're unhappy to the point where you're having panic attacks, and you're crying, and you're angry at this job. Like, you're having too many emotions that your body is just going to shut down and you're going to end up having a meltdown. You're going to end up having like an absolute overwhelmed, like, you know, just a burnout, because you're not going to be able to deal with it. And so that's when I text my manager. I text the manager the next morning, and I basically said to her that I was going to be posting off a letter the next day, and that it was going to be my resignation, and that I was going to be resigning. I looked at my contract, because I was still in my probationary period, stated that I only had to give a week's notice. So I basically wrote a letter to that effect, and I sent it to her, and yeah, I resigned. I resigned with a week's notice, and I basically knew that when I'd finished seeing AJ, I was only going to have to do the weekend after, and that was it. But what happened there was, because of my mental health, I've been signed off from a doctor. So my GP had signed me off for 2 weeks to recuperate and to mentally and physically kind of recuperate from this job. And so I've been signed off for 2 weeks, and I didn't realise this, but if you've been signed off, it then legally means that in the UK you cannot work for that period of time. Doesn't matter if you feel better within that 2 weeks, you've got to get a reassessment, and you've got to be like signed off as fit to work. So I literally couldn't work, and I'm not gonna lie, I left that job and I was miffed that I wasn't gonna get paid, but apart from that I was okay with it, because I didn't want to work. I was happy. I was like not happy fully, I was content with the decision. Like, even though I was fully expecting to work, I was content with the decision that I couldn't work, because I was going into a job that was making me miserable, and so that's why I left. That is why, the long-winded ass story of why I left. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. If you've made it this far, then please comment, let me think. Comment a fruit emoji, so your favourite fruit. Comment your fruit emoji. Mine is strawberries, by the way. My favourite fruit is strawberries, or like peaches. Both of those are amazing. But yeah, comment your favourite fruit down below. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye.